uses a hierarchy of arches when he builds monuments to last centuries, such as these. From the macroscopic to the microscopic, human teeth are structured in a hierarchy of arches. Looking at a cross-section of this tooth, you can see the surface of enamel highlighted in green, and also its underlying dentin layer, highlighted in blue, all hold true to this hierarchy. Zooming in, let's look at what an intact outer layer of tooth enamel looks like. Microscopically, enamel is also constructed of arch forms. They orient towards biting surfaces so teeth can withstand chewing and clenching forces. Time is an essential ingredient in nature's pattern generator. Studying a tree's rings tells you the tree's relative annual growth rate based on whether years were rainy or dry, or even if a forest fire moved through. Looking at enamel, you can observe teeth similarly reflect nutrition and nature's rhythms. Fish scales and seashells are two other places you can see nature's influence on growing organisms over time. Look closely at the enamel shell in this longitudinally cut tooth section, and you'll already see the presence of decaying enamel at 43 days. You can also see disturbances in enamel and dentin formation at birth, called the neonatal line. Only as you continue your journey into the tooth do you observe what seems to be chaos. However, these structural bundles actually cross in elegant and predictable patterns. These crossed bundles help your teeth resist cracking. Structure allows function, we all know that. The keystone is a critical part of an arch's structure. Compressive forces pass through a keystone to the arch's legs. If you remove the keystone from an arch, or either of its legs, the structure will crumble. So why did this ever seem like a good idea? The minute a dentist touches a tooth with a high-speed drill, that tooth enters what biomimetic dentists call the death spiral. The tooth is doomed to more and more expensive and aggressive dentistry on its way to failure. Perhaps you have had some personal experience with a tooth that started out with a small filling, only to need larger and larger fillings, all of which tend to break the tooth apart sooner, if not later. Most of the time, people assume a filling failure is their own fault, particularly when a tooth fractures away from a filling. Biomimetic dental professionals contend otherwise. Each amazing tooth takes a miraculous 9 years to form. Though nothing is like the original, dentistry should be inspired by nature so we can try to reproduce it. Rather than filling a tooth, biomimetic dentists recreate the performance characteristics of intact natural teeth. Preservation of all healthy tooth structure and achieving long-term bond strengths for even the most structurally compromised teeth without recommending crowns is key to a tooth's survival. When people understand accurate, early decay diagnosis, conservative tooth restoration techniques using air abrasion and ozone, put together with advanced bonding abilities that can prevent 80% of future treatment, they willingly invest. Crowns require radical removal of roughly 67% of a tooth's structure simply for mechanical retention and can cause damage to a tooth's pulp. The pulp occupies the hollowed-out center of a tooth. It contains the blood vessels, nerves, and a lymph-like fluid that flows through a tooth's tubules to keep it vital and flexible. Teeth bend and flex during chewing and clenching, yet crowns do not allow the required stress harmony within a tooth that it needs to survive. A crown is the last step before a tooth's death. If it dies, it can be embalmed with a root canal, or it can be extracted. Minimally invasive preventive and biomimetic dentistry are the ultimate in biological dentistry because no dentistry is the best dentistry. Hi, I'm Carol Vanderstoop. I've practiced dental hygiene for over 3 decades and seen more smiles destroyed than I care to think about. One could call it demolition dentistry, and it is far more expensive than it needs to be. What could you do with an extra $73,260? Insurance analysis shows that once a dentist touches a drill to a molar to repair it, The lifetime cost averages over $6,100, exclusive of crowns and root canals on the way to tooth failure. I want you to know dentistry can be far kinder and gentler, and less expensive than is currently practiced by most. If you think of dentistry in different terms, you'll see that dentistry can be gentle and economical. I've seen many techniques and ideas that don't work, and over the last several years, as I researched my book, Mouth Matters, I've learned a lot of surprising solutions that do. As teeth repeatedly break down around old-style fillings, I know patients always surmise it's their own fault when really the failures are usually a matter of poor engineering design from the beginning. I've observed that too many practitioners don't understand the chemistry of the materials they use as fully as they should. I've seen sealant bombs and teeth nearly rotted to the pulp that just the year before seemed to have no apparent decay using traditional diagnostic methods, those being what some professionals secretly call the poke and hope method along with x-rays. How do these failures happen? Progressive architect Frank Lloyd Wright believed novel and spacious building designs were possible when using the full mechanical and physical potentials of the new materials of his time, plate glass and steel. In the same way, mercury-laden fillings became passé years ago as new materials took their place. Unfortunately, most dentists fall far short of delivering the benefits these materials can offer because they use these materials in old ways. And when these old designs fail, as the laws of physics dictate they should, they are only too happy to finish off a failing tooth with a crown. These concentrate chewing forces at the gum line and do not pass them along through to the root as they should. Pay particular attention to this video if your dentist only uses x-rays and a pick or explorer to diagnose, suggests sealants for your children, plans to use a tooth-shattering high-speed drill, or has not learned how to layer resins in a way that mimics nature called biomimetic dentistry. Biomimetic dentists make sure the materials they use expand and contract at the same rate as the differing layers of teeth they are replacing. They also understand how to make material shrinkage work in your favor using a principle called C-factor. You may get a tip-off that your dentist didn't use these principles if a white filling you just received is sensitive for months, or you can see the margins, or if it fails in a few years. I invite you to join me as I introduce you to radical dentistry you might prefer for yourself and family. You can find more details in the book Mouth Matters and Primal Dentistry, and, of course, at primaldentistry.org. The red shape represents the design and the amount of tooth typically removed during a one-surface filling preparation. Chewing forces on properly aligned teeth are vertical. Teeth flex slightly as they absorb forces. As a tooth's arches constantly flex, the concentrating stress creates fatigue along these lines. If the legs of an arch are removed, the structure will crumble. Here, the legs of two arches will be demolished. Is it anyone's expectation a tooth filled this way will last? If you receive a traditional one-surface filling, you lose the legs of two arches. Is it anyone's expectation a tooth filled this way will last? Failure is not a matter of if, but when. Unless. Because a healthy mouth is central to peak general health and failing teeth can devastate your health in shocking ways, what is most often termed biological dentistry must include detecting decay and repairing teeth in a way that keeps them vital or alive. The most gentle, successful, and non-invasive dentistry involves three important techniques. Air abrasion minimally invasive dentistry implies using air polishing and an imaging device that under many conditions is more advanced than x-rays, such as a diagnodent, a SoProLife Action, or the more sophisticated Canary system to detect decay much earlier and predictably than is common. The earlier a dentist detects decay, the less tooth structure she needs to subtract. How do teeth decay? The traditional way of thinking is that masses of oral bacteria and other microbes coalesce to form plaque biofilms. This time-lapse sequence shows how quickly individual microbes accumulate and mature over a 9-hour time span. These microbes convert simple carbohydrates like sugar and bread products into acids that attack a tooth's surface. A biofilm such as the one you see forming holds these acids against a tooth surface where they continuously leach minerals and organic matters from a tooth. These microbes also store sugars internally and so can act like a time-release medication, except that biofilms release acids over time instead of medication. If plaques remain, acid production can last hours after you've had a simple carbohydrate snack or meal. Saliva eventually neutralizes acidic pH, but this can take hours. And this is one reason it is important to stay hydrated. As minerals leach from a tooth surface, the surface loses its luster and begins to look like super white frosted glass. As acids continue to etch a tooth, it sometimes turns yellow and then brown before the surface craters. Microscopically, strong enamel looks solid, almost like glass. Corroded enamel first looks like stacked pipes. They have lost the glue binding them together. A corroded area can lose about half of its mineral structure before the latticework crumbles and requires repair. A lesion usually receives professional repair once the intact surface collapses. Unfortunately, there are 3 ways teeth decay in subsurface layers before the overlying enamel craters, a fact which is largely overlooked in dentistry. So all too often, diagnosis occurs well after internal decay has disintegrated a tooth. Here are 3 ways teeth decay internally. The trickiest to diagnose is the hidden decay in the pits and grooves on the chewing surfaces of back teeth. Slicing a tooth in half top to bottom and examining these fissures, you can see why decay here is so often missed until late-stage decay has weakened a tooth. Even toothbrush bristles can't reach the base of these fissures. Traditional decay detection has been called the poke and hope method. It relies solely on X-rays and a probe to detect decay in fissures. If nothing shows on X-rays and the probe does not stick, the doctor is given all clear for decay. If the probe sticks, doctors usually diagnose decay. More often, fissures are wider at the base than the top. A probe can't get past the constricted top of the pit to detect decay at the base. This tooth's fissure is completely closed to a probe, yet you can see a wedge of super white enamel leading into the decaying subsurface layer, the dark area just under the super white wedge. This wedge represents demineralized or decalcified enamel. It has no crystalline structure and never will again. This disorganized structure is porous and allows acids to percolate into the tooth to erode subsurface layers chemically, not microbially, without detection. A digression for a moment for the sake of completeness. If a person does use a tooth cleaning formulation that contains hydroxyapatite nanoparticles at this point, it can rebuild the crystalline structure to prevent acid percolation. Boca is the one I like because it doesn't contain unnecessary additives that can be harmful to health. With just an Explorer and X-rays, how can you expect a dentist to find this decay, or this decay, or this? It is not realistic to think a dentist knows what's going on at the base of fissures, since an Explorer is accurate only 40% of the time. To review, the super white enamel indicates the first stage of decay. It has lost minerals and its crystalline microstructure, but the macrostructure remains, and so the enamel seems intact, yet acids percolate through this porous structure to cause chemical demineralization of the subsurface dentin layer. Sometimes during tooth development, the outer shell of enamel doesn't form properly. Developmental cracks allow acids to destroy the second layer long before a probe can discover decay. That is what happened to this tooth. You want diagnosis to be early, accurate, and repeatable. Minimally invasive dental professionals may use a diagnodent laser to help them. The diagnodent scans 2 millimeters into the tooth with a diode laser. Air polishing cleans organic debris from chewing surface pits that otherwise might give a false positive indication for decay. Air polishing cleans plaque, food, hard deposits, or other organic debris from chewing surfaces that might otherwise indicate decay that isn't really there. Acteon's SoPro Life is a newer enhanced decay detection tool. Using fluorescence, as does the diagnodent, it can look into a tooth to the same depth. It also requires air polishing prior to use, but what I like about it is that it can discriminate between active decay and remineralizing tooth structure, an important distinction especially for those doctors who use ozone. Green indicates sound tooth structure, red means decaying structure, black indicates a decayed area that has remineralized. The Canary system is the most advanced system. It uses a low-powered laser to detect early decay and other defects in a tooth's crystalline structure not yet discernible on X-rays or with the naked eye during an exam. Look at this cross-section of tooth where the left half is decayed and the right side is healthy. When the Canary operator scans along the tooth's biting surface, it detects the lesion and gives a readout. Let Dr. Tao from this newscast tell you its best feature.
We're able to see under silver fillings, under composite restoration, which are white fillings, under crowns, under sealants.
Canary measures the amount of light reflected by a tooth. A low score means the tooth is healthy.
11.
But a high score means there's trouble under the surface.
88. That's a big number.
Dr. Tao says for Bill, Canary caught decay under several fillings, which didn't seem bad on the initial exam. He found when the old fillings were removed, there was decay dangerously close to the nerves. Instead of just getting new fillings, Bill would have likely needed more drastic treatment in the near future.
So he saved me 2 root canals, which I'm very grateful for.
The Canary system can also indicate if a crystalline defect is just crazing as one sees in fine china, or if it is a true crack that needs to be addressed. You know what a high-speed drill is, but you may not have heard of air abrasion to remove decay. It is much gentler to both the tooth and the patient. Minimally invasive dental techniques use air abrasion instead of a drill as often as possible, partly because air abrasion is selective first for decay. This deceptively strong structural enamel network helps bind a tooth together. Leaving it intact is one way a tooth survives much longer than typical repairs. Air abrasion creates uniform smoothness and rounded internal transitions. Air abrasion is fast, allows finesse, and rarely requires anesthetic shots. Avoiding the static electricity and heat of a high-speed drill helps avoid pain. The trauma of popular high-speed drills can also kill a tooth by creating too much heat and static electricity. They and lasers blast away the rainy ridge. Adult teeth are much more resistant to air abrasion because they go through a maturation of enamel cycle. That means they get much harder as time goes on. We've known since the 1950s that high-speed drills microfracture teeth. These microfractures can propagate like a crack in a car's windshield. The high-speed dental drill also leaves burr bits behind. Filling designs, when using straight-line instruments like a laser or a drill, are typically box-shaped and require removing more tooth than has decayed. They usually blast right through the rainy ridge. In contrast, air abrasion removes only what is necessary and leaves an extremely smooth, intact tooth surface. Air abrasion helps clean up the cracks that form around old mercury fillings. Air abrasion also allows a free-form shape to filling designs. These free-form shapes do not concentrate forces the way angled filling designs dictated by drills or lasers do. This is one reason these designs help a tooth avoid the death spiral of do and redo dentistry on the way to tooth failure. Have you noticed? Mother Nature doesn't do sharp corners. She likes curves. Notice the rounded edges of this air abrasion filling preparation.
Now we're going to show you the advantages between air abrasion and using a high-speed drill. High-speed drill is going to do something the air abrasion doesn't do, and it's going to microfracture this tooth, set it up for a lifetime of failure. It's going to cost you or your child $2,000 over a period of lifetime to touch that tooth with a high-speed drill. Now then, what we do with air abrasion is we take a small sandblaster and then we target the areas of the decay in the tooth. This typical lower second molar tooth has several small areas of decay, and what you'll see is the decay will open up as we go deeper into the tooth. The outer surface of the tooth is extremely hard enamel. It's very different than the inner enamel. It is much more susceptible to decay on the inside of the tooth, so you'll see these cavities open up as we proceed. Now then, we're going to take a high-speed drill. We're going to next show a conservative high-speed drill preparation, the type of preparation that is expected of all dental students in any university, in any dental university. What you're going to see happen is we're going to transilluminate it with an argon laser, and you're going to see the microfractures occur in this tooth as we run this high-speed drill through the tooth. It is devastating to the tooth. This is why it hurts. Remember, we don't have to use any local anesthetic with the air abrasion. The difference between using air abrasion and a high-speed drill. If you'll notice with the air abrasion, all it's going to remove is unsound tooth structure and the small amount of decay that's in this tooth. With the high-speed drill, you're going to destroy a very large amount of sound tooth structure. Now here's the air abrasion as we're working down into that small cavity in the tooth. This is how decay starts. It starts as a very small area of decay underneath the outer surface of enamel that is very hard. As you watch this, the color disappears. Now we're finished. Now we're ready to go to another area of decay in the tooth. Also notice that in the very center portion of the tooth, that's referred to as a central pit in all of the dental literature and all of the dental teaching literature. And what you'll notice there is that is a very solid piece of enamel that connects all four of those cusps together. To destroy that sets the tooth up for eventual failure. Here you can see we removed that cavity, and now then we're going after the fourth and last area of decay in this tooth, the fourth fissure. I'll also point out that it's not absolutely essential to take all of the color out, or all of the affected portion of the tooth out. Once you get deep into the tooth, our glass ionomer cements are going to stop the tooth from decaying in the future. Now then, essentially, we have removed no sound tooth structure. We have not affected the structural integrity of this tooth one bit. This is why we can put a lifetime professional warranty on these restorations. Take a look again. This is the finished preparation in this tooth. And keep in mind that since all we're doing is the same thing as cutting your hair or your fingernails, we're just taking out unsound tooth structure. There is no pain involved. There is no need for anesthesia. We're not destroying sound tooth structure. Now then, I'm going to take the high-speed drill. We're going to transilluminate this tooth with an argon laser. We're going to show you the microfractures that occur in this tooth as we run this high-speed drill through the tooth. There's a little spot in the tooth where the tooth lights up similar to a hologram. And let's see if we can show you the microfractures as we go through this tooth. This microfracturing has been recognized and is known to happen to teeth with the high-speed drill since it was invented in 1953. It's probably one of the best hidden secrets in medicine and dentistry. Okay, the first place we're taught to start in dental school is you start right there in the middle of the tooth in that so-called central pit. Now then you see the little microfractures beginning to form in the tooth. Now then, we're finished. There is a very conservative preparation in the tooth. This probably would not get me a passing grade in dental school because I failed to destroy enough sound tooth structure.
Enamel is the thin, hard outer shell that protects teeth. It is 97% mineralized. In an intact tooth, it passes forces through to the main body of the tooth called dentin, highlighted in orange. Dentin is only 70% mineralized. Think of how a waterbed distributes weight when you lie down on it. Dentin is far more fluid than enamel and passes chewing forces through it similarly. It is a tooth's energy sink. The more structure a tooth retains, the better it will function and the longer it will last. Another key structure, known as a compression arch in architecture, is shown here as a bolded red line. It is called the peripheral rim and helps teeth survive daily chewing forces. The peripheral rim is like the suspension cable for the enamel. Note the two cracks running down the side of the tooth in the lower left-hand corner. A back tooth's peripheral rim is as structurally important as a canned goods rim. The reinforced rim keeps the can from crushing. How many wheel spokes could you blow out before the wheel fails? Look at the compressive weight 4 teacups can handle when their rims are intact. Let us look at the peripheral rim of a bucket. It can stand repeated crushing weight without breaking. If one cuts small, conservative slots across the peripheral rim of a bucket or a tooth, it holds together fairly well. However, if you connect the peripheral rim cuts from side to side across a bucket or a tooth, it can catastrophically fail. A slot prep is a fairly conservative preparation, but it still violates the peripheral rim. A tunnel prep respects the integrity of the peripheral rim and tunnels under it. Believe it or not, in this preparation accomplished with air abrasion and a slow-speed drill, You are looking through a thin, transparent layer of the enamel shell. Called the very extreme outer layer of tooth structure, it is the primary defense mechanism of the tooth against external attack. It is a living structure and can heal itself. It should be protected and preserved. This story concerns one of my daughters. I do not have a Diagnodent or imaging Action diagnostic tool available where I work. But after learning what I described to you as I researched my book Mouth Matters, I was desperate for an accurate diagnosis for my children. Both girls appear to have pristine teeth, no stained pits or grooves. A dental pick does not stick in any pits, nor do x-rays reveal anything. A doctor checking this unfortunately very scratched up x-ray would see nothing. What a dentist looks for is a dark area contrasting with the dense white of a tooth's enamel shell. Typically, you see a dark crescent either here or contrasting darkness somewhere in this area. Nothing dark, right? Now here's the scary part. I dusted all the pits and grooves with my employer's air polishing handpiece. A pit in the molar on the left soon showed a slight stain. I followed it further. The beauty of air abrasion is that it can selectively remove only destroyed tooth structure, so I was not removing any remaining permanent tooth structure. I followed the wormhole until I was perilously close to the pulp. At that time I stopped and then took this x-ray to see how close to the pulp the decay might be. The pulp is the dark area in the center of the tooth that carries the blood, lymph, and nerves that feed and hydrate a tooth. In Mouth Matters, I point out that x-rays are very late in detecting decay. It usually has to be at least 2 millimeters into the second layer of tooth to show. In this case, the decay was much deeper than that, but the wormhole was so narrow it didn't show. She was very close to suffering an abscess on this tooth, and I wouldn't have known it until it was too late. That doesn't make me, a hygienist of over 3 decades, feel very positive about today's dentistry. Do you think this happens every day in America? I promise you it does. Again, this x-ray that shows no decay was actually taken after the decay was removed. Here, I would like to make another point. Fluoride is ubiquitous in our daily lives. I try to avoid it as much as possible, but she had her share growing up, and its heavy presence in our diets, water, and dental products are reflected in the outermost layer of teeth. They scatter x-rays in a way they didn't used to, perhaps delaying diagnosis. And since there are 3 ways a tooth decays from the inside out, I think dentistry's insistence on hardening the outer layer of tooth is damaging in so many ways. We should be looking at root causes and remineralizing from the inside out. Unfortunately, many well-meaning dentists and public health programs require hygienists to seal similarly decayed or demineralized pits and grooves without adequate diagnosis. After this 12-year-old sealant, placed to protect the tooth, was removed and the decayed pits were cleaned out with air abrasion, the decay also nearly reached the pulp. We call this a sealant bomb in dentistry. Sealant bombs and under- and overdiagnosed cases are endless, but let us look at just one more case. If this were your tooth, would you be concerned? Could you determine if it was decayed? And if so, where? Those stains look menacing, right? We'll slice it up in just a moment to see if there's any decay. There certainly isn't any in the front pit. Let's see what's happening at the base of these stains. No decay action in this stained pit. The solid enamel you are looking at is the rainy ridge. Now, which of these stained grooves looks as though it is decayed? The pit on the left or the pit on the right? If your dentist guesses wrong, you lose. If you guessed left, you win. But notice the decay isn't even directly underneath the pit. Okay, so how about the stain in that pit on the right? No, nothing here. That pit is clear. As I just showed you, compromised pits and grooves on chewing surfaces of teeth is one of 3 ways a tooth decays from the inside out, delaying detection using typical X-rays and an explorer. I'll illustrate 2 other ways. First, just as you saw with pit and fissure decay, smooth surfaces can decay within the second layer, though the outer surface appears intact. Nevertheless, the super white wedge has lost its crystalline structure as acids leach minerals out of the enamel. Minerals can and do re-enter a very thin outer layer of tooth from saliva or remineralizing toothpastes. However, when acids have leached enough minerals to reach the second layer of tooth, called the dentin, silent decay begins in the second layer. Acids easily percolate through the no longer crystalline, amorphous, superwhite tooth structure to leach minerals from the subenamel layer called dentin. Significant damage can accrue underneath intact but porous enamel surfaces before the enamel caves and is diagnosed as decay. There is no bacterial involvement in the brown decay seen within the body of the tooth. A third way? You saw how forces on traditional filling designs weaken a tooth, and as the tooth flexes, encourages breakage along these lines. Late-stage diagnosis and dental drills can equally gut a tooth structurally to leave it as Dr. Rainey showed and is illustrated here. Oops! These 2 images introduce a third way teeth can decay from the inside out. As a tooth flexes under pressure, the pressure on cusp tips causes cracks and then decay. When exposed to temperature changes, filling materials unmatched to a tooth's natural expansion capabilities cannot expand and contract at the same rate as a tooth. Therefore, they help break a tooth apart. Additionally, most filling materials do not mimic a tooth's natural ability to compress during chewing. Chewing or clenching these compress it into the tooth like a trampoline as the tooth bulges, stressing the tooth and forming hairline cracks in the sides of the tooth as you saw a moment ago. Biomimetic techniques and materials minimize these problems. As you have seen, traditionally filled teeth or teeth with undiagnosed decay can crack on the sides. Acids pump into the tooth's interior as cracks open and close under the pressure of every bite or clench. Once again, the subsurface decays before the surface collapses, or decay can be detected with X-rays. Biomimetic dentistry is the second cornerstone of gentle, long-lasting dentistry, that is, dentistry that mimics nature. To review, early, accurate, repeatable diagnosis is critical to a tooth's long-term survival. Correct diagnosis using selective removal techniques like air abrasion, plus respecting a tooth's natural stress distribution pathways, is primary for biomimetic dentists. Natural structures must survive stresses and strains, just as tree branches and leaves do. A weave of veins helps leaves distribute stress. Trees use an interlocking root system, while hammocks rely on woven string. Engineers design cars to distribute the energy of a car crash and to buckle in predetermined places so passengers remain safe. Ribbond mesh at the base of a filling is a stress distributor and shock absorber for the stresses and strains of chewing energy. Ribbond stops cracks from forming and can bridge existing cracks to fortify the tooth's foundation, much as laminated safety glass in a windshield does. Ribond also helps seal the fillings to the tooth and minimize resin shrinkage. Another key to recreating the stress-strain harmony of intact natural teeth for those who are beyond minimally invasive techniques or those wanting to replace failing traditional dentistry for techniques with a longer track record is to use precast, pre-stressed materials like inlays, which require their own biomimetic techniques for long-term success. Or layered and time-separated bonding techniques using a principle of C-factor to reduce the stresses placed on white resins. C-factor means cavity configuration and refers to the number of filling walls that bond to the tooth surface to the number of exterior filling walls. The number should be as low as possible because white filling material placed in a two-walled cavity does not shrink towards the light. It shrinks towards the tooth to prevent microleakage, thus new decay. To see that in real time using optical coherence tomography, Dr. Tagami places a no-design bulk resin filling into a three-walled tooth preparation. As the light cures the resin, you can see the composite shrinks towards the two best bonded surfaces at the moment of cure, usually against two walls at the expense of the filling floor. Notice the thin white line forming at the base of the filling where the bond between tooth and filling should be strong. This gap is one reason a no-design white filling can be painful. A tooth self-hydrates with the nutrient-rich fluid that flows up from the pulp and out through the miles of microscopic tubules in a tooth. The trapped fluid causes pain as chewing forces it back into the tubules, which irritates a tooth's nerves. Over time, this gap works the filling away from the side walls as well. Bacteria seep into the gap and begin to decay the tooth all over again. This white restoration now functions as poorly as a mercury filling does because the marginal gaps allow the tooth to bend and flex during function in the same floppy fashion illustrated earlier with mercury fillings. This bending allows more infection and eventually cusps can fracture away from the filling. Once again, the tooth is sacrificed in favor of poor design. John Coyce, a well-respected dental clinician and researcher, is not the first to say it is imperative a tooth be aerabrated before either a direct or indirect filling is placed, both to clean it and to achieve maximum bond strength. Remember, what is the point of any filling if the bond between tooth and filling is poor and it leaks? When a dentist uses the biomimetic dentin sealing technique, aerabrasion reactivates the bonded dentin surface, which again produces a maximum bond. After aerabrating and ozoning a preparation to optimize the bond between the tooth and filling, a biomimetic dentist embeds a ribond mesh within a biobase that mimics the flexible dentin core of the tooth. There are 18 advantages to sealing dentin immediately within a thin coat. These steps can at least quadruple a filling's bond strength. She etches the vertical edges, adds another layer of resin that mimics dentin's elasticity, then a layer matching enamel's harder outer shell. Next, she cuts grooves into the resin using C-factor principles so the resin cures towards the tooth. After light curing and waiting a critical 5 minutes so stronger cross-linked chains form instead of the linear chains that light curing encourages, she fills the sectioning grooves with a last resin increment. She cures yet again. Notice you cannot detect the margins of this filling. The superior adhesion prevents the microleakage that leads to future failure. Quite a dramatic difference compared to this bulk-filled tooth. the bonding catastrophically failed within a year. Most failures are far less obvious. Functionally, it behaved no better than a mercury filling. Delivery, price, quality. Pick two. For already weakened, fractured, decayed teeth, or those that have had past, non-conservative dental treatment, biomimetic dentists offer the training and skills to imitate nature in a way that preserves your teeth and practically eliminates crowns and root canals, and are usually works of art. Chihuly did not learn to blow beautiful vases like these overnight, and most of us could not afford them. Expect the cost of a biomimetic tooth restoration to be comparable to a crown. In the long run, it will likely be a more economical choice and serve you better. In other words, the economic implications of not needing the advanced, invasive care seen in traditional, amputational dentistry can have a profound, positive effect on your life. The third key partner to biological dentistry is ozone. Ozone is one of the most exciting and versatile tools in the dental toolbox. Not a new idea in medicine, Germans successfully applied ozone to gaseous gangrene wounds during World War I. With a microbial kill time 3,000 times faster than chlorine bleach and 50% stronger, ozone is an inexpensive yet powerful antimicrobial. Neither bacteria, viruses, nor fungi develop resistance to it. So, what is ozone? When ultraviolet energy bombards a molecule of oxygen made of two oxygen atoms, many oxygen molecules split into two atoms of oxygen, then recombine briefly with other oxygen molecules into the powerful triplet of oxygen atoms called ozone that many industries use. These next few images have nothing to do with dental ozone use, but graphically show ozone's healing potential. A dental acquaintance owns Criollo polo ponies. One of his best horses had an embedded lead Diablo airgun pellet in his flank for nearly a year before it flared up to look like something other than a nick from another horse's hoof. Veterinarians were able to remove the offending pellet, but unable to heal the deep, palm-sized wound. The dentist finally treated it himself with ozonated water and oils. Only then did the horse make rapid progress, as you can see here. Turning to dental uses, treating a herpetic outbreak with ozone gas can speed recovery and lighten its expression. Often, outbreaks do not recur. Acute herpes cases elsewhere are more likely to be treated by an ozone-trained physician. Ozone-trained dental practitioners, among other problems, treat denture sores and yeast infections, dead or severely infected jawbone, also called cavitations, jaw joint pain, and root sensitivity. Practitioners use ozone to inactivate the bacteria, spores, fungi, and parasites involved in gum disease. It changes oral ecology and pH, plus it activates numerous other healing modalities. Ozone changes the optical qualities of bracket scars, making them less noticeable. If you insist on an implant, ozone application to a site beforehand advances healing by several months. Ozone may be the only way to sterilize a dead tooth with its miles of tubules, though biological dentists think even ozone-treated teeth incubate health-challenging microbes. I wonder, with vision, if we couldn't abolish what is now the backbone of dental practices, drill and fill dentistry. For a moment, I'm going to digress a little bit about tooth structure. A tooth is like a fountain. Each is a complicated living structure that requires nutrition, hydration, and internal cleansing. To that end, blood vessels, lymph, and nerves enter into the hollowed pulp chamber through its base. From the pulp chamber, highlighted in red, run miles of microscopic tubules, about 3 miles in a front tooth and perhaps more than double the miles in back molars. It is through these tubules that nerves and lymph flow, bringing minerals and nutrients to keep a tooth alive, strong, and flexible. Examining this image more closely, the dark filaments running diagonally downwards from the upper right-hand corner are bacteria invading these tubules. 12 to 13 microbes can fit side by side into each tubule, but the tubules are so small not even one white blood cell can enter to mop up the microbial invasion. Even if they could, some bacteria have mechanisms to foil these soldier cells. The decay in this tooth is feeding right into the pulp, tipping its ability to keep the tooth alive and nourished. Interestingly, ozone does not damage a tooth's nerve. It actually switches on repair mechanisms. Treating with ozone gas can settle the pulp, kill microbes within the tubules, and neutralize and deactivate their toxins. This offers a 15 to 18-week opportunity if a person has what is known as an alkalizing diet, for minerals to reprecipitate into the tooth coming mainly from the pulp, hardening and protecting it. That is how a troubled tooth can go from looking like this to this within 3 months. Immediately after air abrading and ozone application, a previously decayed area looks dull and leathery. But several months later, it will look shiny and hard, indicating remineralization. The mind-boggling implication of this process is that it is no longer necessary for a dentist to remove all decayed tooth structure. They can remove just enough to take it to this leathery layer and then stop, so a maximum amount of tooth structure remains to remineralize. Early, repeatable diagnosis and also supersealants are an essential part of the preventive dentistry I explore further in my videos and my books, Primal Dentistry and Mouth Matters. Minimally invasive dentistry is not about obliterating less tooth structure, but about preserving more. This is an entirely different model of dentistry, taking it away from the days of amputation and catching it up to modern medical models. What could this mean for future generations? What is the vision? I see 80% less drill and fill dentistry as dentists correctly diagnose decay earlier and people lose their fear of the invasiveness of current dental procedures and their high cost. You're here because you know the health of the head and neck region has far-reaching and previously unimagined implications for general health. Old, invasive dental procedures are extremely technique-sensitive and painful without anesthetic. Early prevention and intervention is quite the opposite. It is easy, straightforward, and better for you and your children. Wanting to personally verify this before moving forward to advocate policy and perspective changes in the United States, I worked under very basic circumstances in another country. My original intent was to do supersealants, that is, to use air abrasion to remove the organic plug and fissures or clear away already destroyed tooth debris to the leathery layer if present. Notice here you can see the dissection, and also how much tooth structure remained. Next, I applied ozone gas and then a material not often used for sealants that allows the tooth to go through its typical maturation cycle after eruption and that often protects the in-between tooth surfaces as well as the surface on opposing teeth. The material is called glass ionomer. You do need to know that you can't get around the fact that all brands currently contain a minuscule amount of fluoride, but there is a small benefit here, and I've made my peace with it. When glass ionomers are used to seal or fill a tooth, that fluoride may then migrate outward through the many miles of tooth tubules to protect in-between tooth surfaces as well as the surface to which they're applied. If most of the glass ionomer comes off, you don't have to worry about it because you still have that small little layer that protects the tooth. The last thing that you want to know is that glass ionomers also recharge with fluoride when it's present. If you are lucky enough to be completely successful in avoiding fluoride, and I don't know how you would do it in this environment, but it would be the only way that I can think of that fluoride would be somewhat beneficial. That's because the minuscule amounts are applied directly to the point of intended benefit and can protect a tooth from the inside out, which is one of my banner slogans. Could a child be more relaxed during dentistry than this? Super sealants. Mid-level, trained practitioners could economically employ this procedure on a wide scale in the U.S. and all over the world, as you can see here. If we had the vision and the will. Can any of us afford not to?